we're so lucky to have guest faculty members here on many of our weeks. Kristen Ulmer is one of the best known female adventure sports people in the world. She's in the Hall of Fame of the Skiing and Snowboarding Association. And
she's one of the best known extreme athletes in the world.
There you go.
Full stop.
There you go. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And she more than anybody else knows how to experience and express and then help facilitate around how to actually create an emotionally alive life. So she's going to take us through a little bit of a conversation on that, and then we're going to break you up into small groups to talk about it. So come on up, Kristen.
Okay.
Yeah. Welcome.
I'm in the hot seat now.
Everybody put your hands up. Let's do it. Give her a nice, warm, full alumni welcome. Yes.
So extreme sports, what that means is you're risking your life. That's when you get called an extreme athlete. And that's what I used to do for a living. I was considered the best woman big mountain extreme skier in the world for 12 years, which means that I used to jump off cliffs for a living. I used to ski you fall, you die descents. But I'm not a one-trick pony. I retired a long time ago in 2003. And since then, I've spent the last 16 years voraciously studying a Zen approach to life, where I figured out what I did right during my ski career, what I did wrong. And I've also worked with about 10,000 clients now, helping them access high performance states. So am I supposed to be looking up here, or do I look down here? I think I look down here.
You can, it's okay.
It's like, it's not like it's my first Zoom call.
Either,
so.
whatever's comfortable for you works.
All right, I prefer to look up here because, well,
you can. It's good. We can still see you. Yeah, go ahead.
So let me tell you what it was like to be a professional extreme athlete. I remember one time a helicopter just dropped me off at the top of this unnamed peak in Alaska because nobody had ever stood up there before, certainly skied it before. And it's so steep, and I'm by myself, 55 degrees steep, and I have my hand on the slope right above my head. And I can only see the first 2 turns and then nothing for 1,000 meters below except for the valley way off in the distance. That's how steep it was. And the pressure's on because they're gonna film me from the helicopter, and it's $50, $50, $50, and it's hovering right there. And it might avalanche, and I'm gonna jump off a cliff on the way down, but I'm not quite sure where it is, and I gotta be dynamic and fluid, and oh, by the way, the weather's been bad. I haven't skied for a while, because we only go out when the weather's good. So what happens in those moments that takes an athlete into the zone? And how does this relate to you? It's the same thing that helps you be the best parent you can be, the best husband or wife you can be, the best business leader, as you're about to start a business, even the best dog parent you can be. Like anything that you do in life, it really comes down to this. There are 4 basic types of intelligence that we possess. And those 4 are mental intelligence, physical intelligence, emotional intelligence, and spiritual intelligence. So it's a lot of intelligence to draw from that we have access to. And so in that moment, I'm accessing all forms of intelligence that I possess to help me do a world-class performance. I'm going to go over these one by one, and I want you to pay attention to what your relationship is with these 4 different types of intelligence. And I want you to see them like baskets. Like we are born and then we climb the top of a mountain, like we rise to our greatest potential, and we have these 4 potential baskets to take up the mountain. So pay attention to how far up the mountain you've taken each of these baskets. Because if you're only spending your whole life taking one basket to the top of the mountain, you can become very, very limited. But if you're able to take all 4 baskets to the top of the mountain, you become limitless. So going over them one by one, first of all, we have mental intelligence, the wisdom of our minds. And I start with this one because our minds are the experience that, by which we can have access to all the others. Like without our minds, without our cognitive ability to understand, reason, just be awake and aware, we'd be tomatoes. So we say that, okay, opposable thumbs, like that's what makes us kind of the rulers of the universe. No, actually it's our big brains. So when I say mental intelligence, I'm specifically talking about our ability to reason, rationalize, do math, things like that. Now, we have built a secular shrine to this form of intelligence, and it's the only form of intelligence that our modern school system really helps us nurture and cultivate and take to the top of the mountain. And as a result, it's pretty good. You know, like we are planning on visiting Mars soon, and we've developed computers, and we've come up with cures for cancer and come up with new energy resources. And we are so impressed by our own minds that we think that it's the solution to all of our problems. Like, if I could just focus my mind better, then I will be magnificent. And it's actually not true. But look at how we've started to define our mental intelligence, just even in meditation or yoga practice. Like, it's called mindfulness. Like, we want to fill ourselves with our own mind. And we're even to the point where it's said, and those athletes out there, you may be able to relate to this, they say that sports are 90% mental, and the other 10% is mental too, right? They even say that sports are all mental. And actually, that's kind of ridiculous. Great sports performance, like me on the top of the Alaskan peak, is actually kind of 0% mental. And so, because we've built such a shrine to this form of intelligence, if this is the only basket that you take to the top of the mountain, you become very, very limited, actually. And there's a saying in Zen, like a monk and a master were working together, and the master held up a stone and said to the monk, you know, look at this stone. Can you tell me, is it in your mind or not in your mind? And the monk said, well, I'm thinking about the stone, so it's in my mind. And the master said, well, your head must be very heavy then. Mm-hmm. So if you're only in your mind and in that form of intelligence, then you're taking it on all of this data and putting it in your head, and it becomes very, very heavy. So it can be very limited. The second form of intelligence is physical intelligence. And when we get into physical intelligence, we get into our bodies, and those of you who are on this probably know what I mean. But when we're in our bodies, we're free from thought.
You're good.
Okay, we're free from thought. And we can have an experience that is free from thought. Like, take digestion, for example. That happens without thought. Breathing happens without thought. Do you know that a woman who is in the hospital and brain dead can actually grow a baby and birth a baby? You know, that's the kind of intelligence that our bodies possess. It is a very underutilized resource, though. Mostly we see it as a life support system for our brains, or it's the dumping ground for repressed emotions. And we look at athletes, for example, like the meathead who can't do well in school and he's just kind of dumb. Like, we don't see him as intelligent, but yet he goes out on the football field, maybe, and he is absolutely brilliant out there. And so we don't call that guy intelligent, but we really should. So the physical intelligence, like, next thing you know, you're tapping into your senses. So what do we have for senses? We have taste, smell, sight, hearing, touch, and then also the sixth sense of intuition and instinct, gut feelings, and operating on your impulses. Like, that's what that meathead, who's not considered intelligent, is actually accessing when he's brilliant at physical intelligence. And so when we're in our bodies, there's no past or future. Our minds will interpret things in the past, like, oh, I used to break my leg. I broke my leg in the past and I still have that pain there. But when you're in your body, there is no past or future. And as a result, your body doesn't lie to you. It doesn't distort reality in any way. And you can trust what you find there to be true. Like, if you're trying to make a decision and you're in your head, your mind will lie. But if in your body, then you can trust the emotions and sensations that you find there to be your absolute truth. It's where your heart is. It's where love is found. And I think that's the reason why people really want to have a love practice, because it takes them into their heart, it takes them into their body, and transcends the mind. It's where passion lies. It's where self-expression comes from. And let me tell you, in that Alaskan mountain, you know, 3, 2, 1, go, I push off, they're filming from the helicopter. Like, I don't want to perform for my head. And even just thinking about it in practical terms, Like my center of gravity is up pretty high, but if I'm in my body, not only is my center of gravity lower, but then I'm not in my head anymore, and I'm just operating on gut reactions, impulses, instinct, all of that. And it's also about pure awareness, not self-awareness like in our minds, but just awareness itself. And it reminds me of a story. A man had a horse and cart stuck in the mud, and he was trying to get it out, and the Zen master was watching him go through this process, and he's shaking the cart and trying to dig the mud out and enticing the horse with a carrot, trying to push the horse, pull the horse. Finally, after about an hour of this, the Zen master goes over and he whispers in his ear, loosen the reins, loosen the reins. And I like this story because if you loosen the reins, the horse will figure it out. You know, if you loosen the reins on your body too, your body will just kind of sort things out. And animals are really distinctly living in their bodies. They have a physical intelligence that we long for. Next, there comes emotional intelligence, which is my favorite subject these days. And there are, we've been talking about here, 5 primary emotions, kind of like there are 3 primary colors, red, yellow, blue, from which those 3 primary colors, the entire color spectrum is created, infinite number of colors. So the 5 primary emotions are the basis by which our entire human experience is created. Like we're here to feel, right? We're here to think too, but we're here to feel. And so these 5 primary emotions are fear, anger, sadness, kind of the bad ones, and then joy, which we love, and then sexuality, or I prefer to call it eroticism because it includes the sexual but isn't limited by the sexual. So right now, emotional intelligence is seen in our culture as our ability to identify and understand our emotions as a way to control them. You know, I actually think that that should not be what's taught about emotional intelligence. It seems to me that it's as far off track as a train in the ocean. Emotional intelligence actually should be our ability to identify and feel our emotions in an honest way and have them help us come alive. Like, can you find a way to feel your emotions in an authentic way and express them in a mature, creative, and expansive way? That's emotional intelligence. So back to me being in Alaska, what I'm tapping into there, it's like the body's the engine, but the emotions are the fuel. And so fear, for example, of course I'm feeling fear. I could die on this run. There's a potential avalanche danger. And the fear is here to take me into heightened states of awareness. Extreme sports are notorious for taking people into the zone, and little else does, you know, because there's so much fear. And we're more willing to feel fear than most. And the analogy that I can use with fear is like Bambi. Bambi's eating grass in a field somewhere and minding her own business, and all of a sudden there's some rustling in the bushes, and she perks up. She feels fear, and she's looking around, and her eyesight's better, her hearing's better, and she can see it there. It's a tiger. She takes off running, and she runs faster than she ever has. She's become super athlete. Like Bambi plus fear equals super Bambi. And in my story, of course, Bambi outruns the lion. Did I say lion or tiger? Tiger. And then she's back eating grass in a field. 10 minutes later, she doesn't have PTSD. She doesn't think, why does this always happen to me? Like, no, she has just let the emotion run its energy course through her. And so it comes into, through, and out of our lives, these emotions, like water through a hose. And so long as we're in flow with them, they're going to be the energy in your engine that helps you go anywhere and do anything. So in Alaska, my fear was my greatest asset and ally. And because I merged with it, became intimate with it, it took me into the zone to heightened states of awareness, presence, helped me bring my A game to everything that I was doing. Anger, you know, right or wrong. Anger is one of also the most misunderstood emotions that we possess. If it weren't for anger, then slavery would still exist. And there's a woman, I think she's Swedish, she's 16 years old, Greta Thunberg, who's leading the cause about turning around climate change. And she's approaching it from a place of anger. But you can see that she's just very firm, confident, secure, drawing a boundary, trying to right a wrong. So That's emotional intelligence. We were talking before about sadness. Also, if you take sadness into your piano performance, like you can move people to tears. So this is emotional intelligence. So just ask yourself too, what is your relationship with your emotions? And then finally, we have spiritual intelligence. Now, spiritual intelligence, there's been a lot of institutions that have grown up around spirituality. So I don't want you to be confused by this, because in today's world, spirituality has to be redefined to reflect what we know now, which is that religion and spirituality are separate things. Now, somebody can be very religious, but not spiritual. Or somebody can be very spiritual, but not religious. So here's where we start to talk, and we've certainly been exploring this yesterday and today, how inspiration can come, not from religion anymore, but can come from music, from dancing, from your sexual relationship with your partner, meditation, yoga. Like, there's so many different ways in which we can ignite our spiritual intelligence. And it's where you enter, like gardening, you enter the inside of the gardening experience. You enter the inside of the music. You become intimate with the music. Then you're having a spiritual experience. Now, it's not natural for us to find a spiritual awakening. And in fact, I think of Star Wars. May the force be with you, they say. They actually kind of got it a little bit wrong. Like, look at spirituality as like a river, and may the river be with you, may the force be with you. It doesn't work that way. It's not our natural state to be in the river. It's more our natural state to be human. And then we're searching for a spiritual experience. So we have to actually go on a journey to try and find it. We have to actually go and find the river. It doesn't bend to meet us. So Star Wars would better serve its audience by saying, may you be with the force. So may you be with your spiritual essence. You have to go find it because it's not natural. I'm reminded of a story of two fish swimming through the ocean, and they're having this wonderful fish time, and they're chatting, and an older, wiser fish swims by and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And they stop talking and they keep swimming. And eventually they stop and they look at each other and they're like, "What's water?" So it's all around us, this spiritual essence. And how we find it is by asking important questions and being curious about the answer. Like, the important question that I can think to ignite a spiritual intelligence is, what is the bigger experience in life here, like the water, that has been tickling me like a feather on my face, trying to get my attention, that if I were to listen to, would kind of make me feel bigger and expand me beyond my limited personal view of the world. So spiritual intelligence, we cannot understand. We might use our intellect to try to understand it. It's more of an experience that we have. And here's where we shift from mindfulness to mindlessness. Like, basically lose your mind and then you're there. Lose your form and become formless, where you drop off body and mind and access something bigger than yourself. Now, there are many names for this type of intelligence, spiritual intelligence. Every spiritual tradition has one. The Tao, Christ consciousness, in Zen we call it enlightenment. In sports we call it the zone. So that actually, that last bit is interesting, because back to that Alaskan face, you know, the zone is a spiritual experience. And I actually have seen that athletics are the kind of most oft way that people have access to spiritual intelligence than anything else out there, but the least understood and least discussed. And they're very tied together, these last three: the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual intelligence. And so here's where I shift into just acknowledging how connected all of these different types of intelligence are. Like, really, there's mental intelligence, and then there's all the others. So on that Alaskan face, I'm willing to feel my fear. And that willingness to feel my fear, because fear is an emotion in your body, takes me into my body organically.